So welcome everybody to the sixth and final 2021 webinar sponsored by the Siskiyou Land Trust. And we have a large agenda tonight, meeting with the Trail Association. I'm Steve Bullock. I'm on the board of the Siskiyou Land Trust, and I'm sitting in for Renee Casterline, who usually does this. It's really an honor and pleasure to be hosting this with the Trail Association. I kind of consider MSTA as the sister nonprofit to the Land Trust. There's a tremendous amount of support that goes back and forth, and in a way, they really support our more silent work by maintaining trails, specifically the Spring Hill Trail, and the trail, the Kingston Meadow Trail, going from the city park to downtown. Individually, many volunteers from the Trail Association jump in full bore, helping the Land Trust do projects and bolstering our workforce. So I would like to turn this over to John Schuyler, who will then manage the panelists from this point on. Enjoy.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, on behalf of the Mount Shasta Trail Association, we really want to thank the Siskiyou Land Trust for giving us this opportunity to share all the exciting stuff we're working on. Also, there's a whole lot of people, entities we'd like to thank. So just generically, I want to thank the land management agencies, our donors, our grantors, our volunteers, and just our supporters that make all of this happen. So without any much ado, I'm gonna do a screen share, get started on our PowerPoint, and then you'll see that what everyone has to say. So let's see, there we go. So again, yeah, this is our 2021 projects, and this is a really exciting year for us. We have a lot of things we're working on. We have funds from grants that are making all this happen. We have a great core of volunteers helping us out. So yeah, I think you'll enjoy what you're going to see tonight. If you need more information about the Trail Association, here's our website. We build trails, advocate for more access to trails and trail protection, and we work to conserve the natural beauty of our area. We also have a Facebook page, so you might check us out for that. And our Trail Challenge also has its own Facebook page. So we're in the thick into social media. Here's the sequence of presentations you're gonna see tonight. So we're going to start off with Mike Hupp talking about the Castle Lake to Heart Lake Trail. And then Tom Hesseldens will follow up talking about Mossbrae Falls. Paul Schwartz will then discuss all the things happening at Lake Siskiyou. And then I'm going to come back and talk about the Gateway Phase 1 reroute. And then I'm going to be followed again by Mike, who's going to talk about Gateway Phase 2, the construction going on. And then Linda and John, Linda Hardy, John Thompson, are going to talk about the 2021 Trail Challenge that's going to kick off on May 1st. And then finally, our president, John Harch, is going to talk about volunteer work, volunteer opportunities, and then he's going to coordinate the question and answer period and any other information that you need to know about the Trail Association. I'm going to hand it off to Mike.
Okay, am I on the air? Okay, so Castle Lake to Heart Lake, and I think most of us have been up to Heart Lake at one time or another, and it truly is one of the gems of the Cascades. But the trail to Heart Lake was past tense, a real mess. It had become deeply incised in a lot of places and eroded badly, and up in the alpine zone it had become indistinct, and people were sort of walking by whatever route they wanted to go to get to Heart Lake, and it really devastated the vegetation in the above tree line up there. And here about a year ago, the Wilderness Land Trust was able to acquire the property where this trail is located. It's on private land right now, and Wilderness Land Trust will donate the land to the Forest Service here in a few months, or sell the land to the Forest Service. But in the meantime, we have an opportunity to get in there and fix the trail. So John, if you want to move to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the characteristics of a good trail. And you know, we want it to be environmentally sustainable. We want it to be safe to use. We want it to be aesthetically pleasing, you know, go to pretty places. We want it to be efficient. And we also want it to have minimum maintenance requirements. We don't want to build something that we have to spend a lot of time maintaining. And if you go over and look at the map, you can see the blue line there that's X'd out is the old trail that we're going to close out and decommission. And then you can see the red sections are new switchbacks that we're building to replace those steep eroded sections. And we routed these switchbacks so they go out to really stunning overlooks. So, when you all start using this trail, you're going to really enjoy the vistas that it takes you to. And then up there, kind of in the center of the map, you'll see a red line that kind of looks like a little railroad track. That's an existing user trail that we were able to fix up a little bit. We're trying not to build more trails up there. There's already way too much trail in the alpine zone. So we're trying to get that down to just one route that people can hike up to Heart Lake. So let's go to the next one, John. Take a look. So this is what it takes to build a trail up there. The first step is you start over on the left. We brush the trail out and flag a route, and then come back and more precisely locate it with little flags on the ground. And in this case, we're digging the trail by hand. And we called on our good friends at the Deadwood Conservation Camp, and they were able to come over and give us some invaluable help. And then after the Deadwood crew pioneered the trail, we came back with a couple of volunteer days, and you can see the hardy volunteers out there working, and we want to thank you for your blisters and your bruises and your sore muscles, but you guys just did an amazing job up there on the work day we had. And there in the lower right, you can see one of the reconstruction sections of the trail. For those of you that know and love the old trail, this completely replaced that real steep, rooted section where the trail was an incised gully with the exposed tree roots. So you'll find this is much more pleasant to walk. And then let's go to the next slide. So these are some views from the trail. These are some of the vista points up there. And once you leave the timber and get into the alpine zone here, our major objective here is to get folks walking on one trail. And so this spring, this will be kind of our next step after we finish a little bit of the work on the lower section. And the snow melts, we want to get up into that alpine zone, and we'll have 2 or 3 work days where we improve and clarify the route the rest of the way up to Heart Lake in the alpine zone. So why don't you go to the next slide, John. So this is John, kind of run your cursor around there in the middle of the alpine zone. So there are so many trails up there, you can see them from outer space. This is a Google Earth view. And you see Heart Lake is up there in the upper right corner of the photo, and Castle Lake is down there in the lower right corner. And the new trail winds around up through the trees. And then up there in the alpine zone, it becomes indistinct. And that's the part that we're going to be working on fixing this spring. And as we get those segments of trail clarified in the alpine zone, we'll begin to close off some of the many user trails up there, and also rehab some of the really steep eroded sections of the existing trail, and then that'll be kind of it for the trail. But that's not going to be the end of the restoration work up there. You can see that area has really had a lot of use and impact, and we're hoping that we can start a long-term restoration project up there to begin to recover some of the vegetation. In the springtime, it's when the snow melts, it's really lovely there where the vegetation is still intact. And we're hoping that we can use some of the expertise of the Forest Service to begin to recover some of that alpine zone. So let's go to the next slide. How can I help? That's, by the way, that's Little Castle Lake on top and then Heart Lake on the bottom. So how you can help is show up on our volunteer days and put your gloves on and come out and get dirty and help us move rocks and improve these trails. And then, of course, all this also costs money. And if you have the ability and are so inclined, there are lots of ways you can donate to the Trail Association as well. So that's all I have on the Castle Lake, Heart Lake Trail. We'll be having a work day up there, I think, in about 3 weeks. We're kind of watching the snow right now. And our first goal is going to be to finish the work that we started last fall. And then next we'll move up into the alpine zone and start improving and clarifying that section of trail as it goes to Heart Lake. So, thanks, John.
Hey, thanks, Mike. We're going to go from the high alpine to downriver, and Tom's going to talk about Mossbrae Falls.
Hi, everybody. First slide there, John. Mossbrae Falls has been visited, well, starting with the Native Americans, but back in the 1920s, there was a resort at Shasta Springs. Southern Pacific Railroad owned it and provided access along the railroad tracks from Shasta Springs downriver with a catwalk over a bridge by Mossbrae Falls. And that's how people got there for many years. In the 1940s, a bridge was built at the end of Prospect Avenue. When I moved up here in 1978, that's how I got to Mossbrae Falls. I just walked across that bridge and up the tracks about a third of a mile. Next slide, John. In recent years, Mossbrae Falls has really increased in popularity to the point where it's really become a safety hazard. 2 people have been hit by trains so far. Fortunately, nobody has died. We actually, back after the spill in 1991, I worked with Southern Pacific Railroad to try to get a trail. At that time, the St. Germain Foundation, which had land on the opposite side of the river, didn't want to participate. But Southern Pacific was willing to put $1 million into the project with the idea of having a trail up on the opposite side of the river as the tracks. Next slide, please. When that didn't work, we started looking at going on the same side as the railroad, but down by the river. And this puts the trail in the active floodplain, but not, it would be high enough that during spring runoff, you would still be above the river, and it's quite spectacular down there. So it's just an entirely different experience, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Next slide, please. So when you're down there by the river, you can see you're fairly far from the trains. You don't really notice them much. It definitely solves the safety problem. And that is what we've been pursuing in the last 4 or 5 years. The railroad is now Union Pacific. They bought out Southern Pacific. And the process has been slow. We have a major donor that's funding the work to date. Next slide, please. The route that we're looking at using is Hedge Creek Falls as the trailhead for both falls, and dropping down and having that opportunity to go behind Hedge Creek Falls, and then from there out to the river. What we did a little bit of over a year ago, John, if you could go to the next slide. We used some of the major donor money to start improving the Hedge Creek Falls Trail because portions of it were too steep. And we greatly improved it. And the timing was excellent because with the pandemic, well, everybody saw how overrun Mount Shasta was last summer. Well, Hedge Creek Falls was overrun. People wanting to get out of the big city, wanting to get outdoors. Hedge Creek has become a de facto rest stop along Highway 5. So you get people from all over the place down there. In fact, when we were working on the trail, I was talking to people from Australia and Europe, Japan, and we were pretty flexible. We were able to allow them to get by the equipment while we were working and didn't interrupt anybody's opportunity to see Hedge Creek Falls. Next slide, please. This spring, early spring, out of the blue, this 5-foot diameter old growth Douglas fir tree decided to fall and just slammed into the trail beyond Hedge Creek Falls. And it was so massive, the city of Dunsmuir called and said they couldn't deal with it. So I brought the trail contractor back down and a timber operator, and we got it cleared. And the point of this is that we need this access to be able to continue the project after we get through the approvals process with the railroad. So we had to get this out of the way anyway. So it's all clear now. Next slide, please. Interestingly, last summer, when we got the trail improved, not only did we improve it to the overlook on the river, but we extended it down to the river. And part of that is to access where a bridge will ultimately go, but we also wanted to provide river access, which the Hedge Creek Falls Trail never did provide. There was a user trail going down, but it was very steep. It's great fishing down there, swimming, and a lot of people discovered they could wade across the river and then walk up to Mossbrae Falls for that 1/3 of a mile instead of going all the way down to Scarlet Way and walking 1.25 miles each direction. What was particularly interesting about this photo is these are 2 women from out of the area wearing their masks in the middle of the river. So it just really struck me. Next slide, please. This is the kind of bridge we want to build over the river right at the mouth of Hedge Creek, taking advantage of a rock outcrop on one side. The bridge in this photo is 120 feet long and 6 feet wide. The one at Hedge Creek will be the same length, 120 feet, 5 feet wide. And we don't have funding to do everything. We're about halfway there with the major donor contribution. So we will be doing grant writing, but we need to get the railroad completely on board first. Next slide, please. We've had the railroad to the site several times. They are supportive. It's a process, to say the least. Where it stands right now is we've done engineered drawings, submitted them to a civil engineering firm that works for the railroad down in the Sacramento area. They reviewed our drawings, sent back some requested edits and wanting some additional information. We're working on that right now. Interestingly, one of their concerns was what to do about the trail during high water, how we're going to handle trail closures. So we will have signage, but of course it'll be obvious when the trail's underwater. But that's just one of the realities. The area that the trail will be, the evidence there along this shoreline is that this won't erode. It'll have the same kind of coarse rock on it that the railroad tracks have on it. So the public's already quite used to that. That's where we stand right now, and that's all I have to provide. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Paul's going to come up next and talk about Lake Siskiyou and what's going on there.
All right, again, good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Schwartz. I am a board member on the Mount Shasta Trail Association, and tonight I'm excited to talk to you about the Lake Siskiyou Trail Map and Kiosk Project. Next slide, please. So the lake, as you all know, is a recreational jewel of our community and is one of the most popular outdoor destinations in the county. Probably the biggest attraction and the most used recreational facility at the lake is the Lake Siskiyou Trail. Next slide, please. So the main trail is 6.7 miles around the lake, and that combined with 2.3 additional miles from several alternate trails and the Box Canyon Trail creates a grand total of a 9-mile trail system. And with that many miles of trail, there's really very little information, trail user information around the lake. We have just 2 kiosks. So the next slide. We've got this kiosk, which is at the Cable Beach parking area, and the other kiosk that was installed at the beginning of the trail is up at the Chalet parking area. And the Chalet parking area is probably better known locally as the parking lot across the street from the tennis courts. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of the original map that was installed about 10 years ago. It had a lot of good information, but there's been a lot of changes to the trail since these maps were created. These maps were paper and they were placed on the kiosk behind plexiglass. And as you'll see in the next slide, please. The kiosks have done well, but the maps not so well. They didn't weather very well. This map is at the kiosk at the Chalet parking area. It's not legible anymore. And the map that was originally installed at the kiosk down at the Cable Beach area has actually been taken down. So this is where our project begins. Next slide, please. So in terms of our kiosks, we've been working with the county. We've determined 3 new locations for additional kiosks. Our bridge and kiosk guru, Mark Telligent, has kindly designed 3 new kiosks. He constructed them at his house, and then he deconstructed them at his house, and then transported them down to the lake where, with the help of our volunteer crew work leader, John Harch, they've installed 2 of the kiosks. This one on the left is at North Shore, and the one on the right is the one that we have down at the Box Canyon Dam parking area. There's a 3rd kiosk that will be installed later this month, and it's going to be put at the Speedy Point Trail access parking area. And I'll be able to show that to you here in a little bit. Okay, next slide. All right, here he is again. One happy trail dude. This is John Harch. He's the leader of our volunteer work team. And I slipped in this slide in my presentation, just kind of a random opportunity to give a shout out to the work crew and the tireless work that they do. They're everywhere, including in my presentation and out on the Lake Siskiyou Trail. Okay, thank you, volunteers. Next slide, please. So the maps, this is really the focus of the project, the big focus of the project. The image on the left is the map trailhead kiosk location out at Gateway. I present that just as an illustration of what we're trying to achieve with the map kiosks at Lake Siskiyou. The image on the right is an image of the new map. It's a work in progress, and we're almost complete with the project. The new maps will be about 3 feet wide and 3.5 feet tall, and they'll be constructed out of a durable, weather-resistant material, just like the Gateway trailhead maps. And we hope to have a final version of this map ready for fabrication by the end of this week, and we hope to have all these maps put up by the end of next month, so the end of May. On this map, we've created 5 distinct trailheads, which gives us 5 distinct trail segments. And so we'll use the trailhead kind of as a start point and a stop point for each of the trail segments. For example, the Chalet trailhead, which I talked about, and John Schuyler, if you can hover the cursor over the Chalet trailhead. If you were to hike from there towards North Shore to the North Shore trailhead, and you can drag the cursor over that for me, John, North Shore. All the way out to North Shore. The trail segment between those 2 trailheads, we're calling the Wagon Creek Bridge segment. And we've got 5 different trail segments that we've designated. I'll read them off to you here. So the segments are 2 Creeks segment, the Box Canyon Dam segment, the WA Bar segment, the Wagon Creek Bridge segment, as we just showed you, and the Delta section. The map will also have mileage for each of these segments, and each of the maps will have a "You Are Here" designation on it, so you kind of know where you are. The maps are designed with a much more helpful trail user information. So it's really my recommendation to everybody listening to this webinar tonight to get out to the lake sometime here this summer, check out these new maps, and become familiarized with the different trails sections. I think you'll really enjoy them. I also want to mention that the Trail Association has led and funded this project. A general fund allocation and fundraising efforts have freed up more than $6,000 for this project. I also want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to the individuals and the organizations that have made this project happen. Mark Telligen, who's our bridge and kiosk guru, Dave LaPlante, Tom Heselden's, Jason Ledbetter from Siskiyou County, General Services Manager. He's been a real ally in this project. John Schuyler, John Harch, the Shasta Lily Guild, because they created a beautiful quilt for us to raffle off, and we were able to raise almost $1,500 with that quilt. And a thank you to the community of Mount Shasta. Next slide. So we're looking forward, not completed with this project, but some of the things that we've got in the works after we fabricate and install the new trail maps next month is to keep a focus on a permanent footbridge over the Delta. The county has expressed some interest in trying to find some funding sources for that. We're going to work to establish more trails and work to realign some aspects of the trails through the campground, and we hope to establish a Speeny Loop Trail. So that's what's going on at Lake Siskiyou. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Paul. So now the next 2 presentations are going to be talking about the Gateway Trail Network. We distinguish between phase 1 and phase 2 of Gateway by when they were built. So phase 1 was built about 10 years ago, and I think it's about 10, 11 miles in total. And then Mike, after my presentation on the reroute, we'll talk about phase 2. So for this reroute, there's a part of the trail that needs to be fixed. And here's the original kiosk map, and it shows, you know, the trailhead here off of Everett Memorial, and the Gateway Trail itself is kind of this gold colored trail. Then they have all the other trails added in, like a pig farm, stump, and then one of the newer trails we added in was Foundation, goes there. But what we're going to focus on is this area in here, where there's some problems that we'll see here in a second. So the problems with about a 7/10 of a mile segment of the original trail is that it's too steep, and being steep means that it's hard to keep it from eroding, and we definitely don't want that to happen. You have these really tight switchbacks that make it difficult for mountain bikes, at least mountain bikers like myself. And in working with the Forest Service, we know that that stretch of trail was not consistent with the environmental assessment, the document that approved the construction of Phase 1. And there's an opportunity to get a piece of the trail out of ephemeral drainage, which is a good thing. And you know, kind of icing on the cake is that this reroute will provide some wonderful view opportunities than the existing trail. So that'll be a good thing. So this map here shows, you know, that problematic stretch. And, you know, here's the tight switchbacks that I have a problem with, and the really steep stretches here, and you see a lot of switchbacks here. So in this area here is where we are putting in the reroute. So this map here shows the reroute that it's, you know, we're working on it. It's not quite done, but it's getting close. So it's this dotted red line here that replaces this stretch of blue line here. And it's, you know, again, about 7/10 of a mile. And it'll be quite the improvement to the Gateway network. So as I kind of get into what we're going through, I want to go over the sequence we go through for, you know, building a new trail or doing a reroute. And so, you know, working with Trail Labs and the Forest Service, we flagged a final alignment. And then the next step is to clear vegetation from the construction corridor, cutting brush, pruning trees. And then we had to dispose of that vegetation we cut. And in this photo here to the left, it shows some piles, slash piles with plastic on them that kept them dry for burning. And then we rough in a trail tread, and then finally we do some finalized work, and there might be some rock work that we'll have to do. So that step of clearing the corridor so we can build the trail, in some ways we kind of know why the original trail wasn't built here, because it's a sea of brush. It's old growth manzanita, I don't know, 10, 12 feet tall. I mean, some of it is almost merchantable size. It was pretty incredible. We called upon our volunteers to clear the corridor, and you know they gave it all, and they did a really good job, but they could only, you know, get so far. And so after the volunteers kind of pooped out, we enlisted the help of the Deadwood, California Department of Corrections crew, and these were 20-person crews, you know, about 2 or 3 chainsaws running. They did a great job of clearing that construction corridor. You know, they really liked, you know, of course, getting, as inmates, they like getting out into the woods. And so it was a win-win for us to get that trail construction corridor cleared. So after the corridor is cleared, we start construction. And again, our contractor is Trail Labs. And, you know, they're roughing in the trail. A lot of it's already been roughed in. This photo here, I just took yesterday out there on the ground. So it's looking good. And then after a Trail Labs does their thing, we'll bring in volunteers to do some finishing work. And that's, you know, kicking rocks out of the tread, maybe cleaning up some of the drainage structures, cutting roots out of the tread too, maybe some pruning. But they're gonna make it a really nice trail. And so what we're looking forward to is that this summer, it'll be good to go for hiking, biking, running, whatever. So that is my presentation. And next we're going to go to Mike Hupp again.
Okay, I think I'm on the air here. So I want to encourage everybody to go out and hike this Gateway reroute that John just talked about. This is going to be a singular trail around here. It's It just has some spectacular overlooks. I'm going to talk about Gateway Phase 2, and Gateway Phase 2 is a 45-mile expansion of the existing 11-mile Gateway Trail network. And people have been working on this project for nearly a decade. Lots of folks have been involved, way too many to mention. But I do want to shout out a special thanks to a few. Drew Braw and the members of Bike Shasta, who got the effort started way back in 2012. The Forest Service has been a great partner in this thing, just incredible to work with. The Deadwood Conservation Camp crew. We could not possibly have done this project without the Deadwood crew and the horsepower that they brought in to clear brush. And of course our many volunteers, and I thank all of you. And major funding for the Gateway expansion has been provided by the McConnell Foundation and also with a grant from the state of California. Let's go on to the next picture here, next slide. So there's the Gateway network. And this started as a kind of a strategic planning exercise with with IMBA, the International Mountain Bike Association, about a decade ago. And then we took the IMBA plan, and Andrew Pelkoffer, Trail Labs, took their plan and spruced it up and reconned it, spent endless hours out here walking back and forth across this landscape. And Andrew developed this really beautiful network trail system. And John, if you want to show them the existing Gateway trails, there's the 11 miles of the existing Gateway trail right there. And the Gateway trailhead is just right there. That's where you park. And then all of this is below the Everett Memorial Highway, so John could just kind of swoop along the highway there. It goes up past McBride. Oop, you're getting on the power line there. There you go. And then on over to the Everett Overlook. We're going to have a trailhead at McBride. We're going to use the Everett Overlook as a trailhead. We're building a new trailhead at the 10-gallon plantation, and then there will also be a trailhead over at the Nordic Center. And Andrew's design for this is broken into 3 zones, and we'll start off in the learning zone over there. This is gentle terrain, pretty easy to ride, and the idea here is that this is a place to build some skills and a place to ride or walk for folks that are in the area over there, or don't want to use some of the other trails that perhaps are a little more challenging. And then kind of in the center is the Big Mountain Zone, and this is primarily designed for mountain biking, but certainly all of these trails are what we call all user trails. They're available to hike on. You can ride horses on them, you can ride bikes on them, but they do have design standards that we incorporate into them. And most of the Big Mountain Zone is really designed for mountain biking. And you'll notice there's a spur that connects over to the Mount Shasta ski area. That's kind of a nice touch. You'll be able to take off from town. You could start at the Gateway Trailhead, and you could ride up to the ski area and have a cheeseburger and a beer, and then come back on another trail, not cross the same trail twice. Moving over further west, you have the community zone. That's the area immediately outside of town here that kind of wraps around the existing Gateway trails. And then last, there's a trailhead that's not on national forest. It's actually going to be on city land out by the old radio tower, the old gas station out there at the edge of town on South Mount Shasta Boulevard. And I think one of the exciting rides will be what mountain bikers call a big drop ride from the Everett Overlook all the way down to the edge of town. it'll be a pretty exciting opportunity. And it's just, it's hard to express how much this is going to add to our little town. Having a trail network like this right outside the back door is just going to be terrific, because you don't have to travel anywhere. It's literally at the edge of town. You see Mount Shasta City there. The trail system just kind of wraps around it. And when I think about how much trails add to the quality of life in our community, because they provide access to the incredible scenery that we have. They provide opportunities to go out and go bird watching. They provide opportunities for muscle-powered recreation and constructive things for kids to do. I'm really excited about what this network will do for us here. Let's go to the next slide. So, how we build a trail. This one is a little different than the Castle Lake Trail. We're using mechanized, we're using machinery for significant parts of it, but you start off in the upper left, and that's clearing the wall of brush that we have out here. Again, this is the Deadwood crew, and one of the things you'll notice is that we're not cutting a little narrow path through the woods. We're actually opening up a corridor so that you're not trapped in a tunnel of vegetation, and you can see. And then the next slide down there, Andrew, that was the first day moving the first dirt last year on Gateway Phase 2. And then the bottom slide down there, another shot of one of Andrew's excavators. And then go over to the upper right, our indispensable volunteers. That was the volunteer work day we had out there in the fall last year. We had one day it snowed on folks, but I think everybody enjoyed it. And you can see the beautiful trail there that they finished up. I think this is what we're calling BMZ 7. This connects the 10-gallon plantation and goes over toward the steamboat or steam donkey trails, and over toward the Learning Center. So, and then in the center there, you kind of see the final product, a really well-designed, well-constructed trail, a little rock work there, and you can see the open character of the trail that we're trying to create by doing the brushing and the hard work of the Deadwood crew. So let's go to the next slide. So the next steps. This summer, we're going to put a lot of effort into brushing. I think we're probably going to have to contract out some of that, but some of the manzanita patches that we've hit in this project are impenetrable without equipment. And then we want to complete the trails that we pioneered last fall. There's, I think, 3 or 4 miles of that, and then there's about 6 miles of new construction planned. This entire project is going to take a while. It's going to be 4 or 5 years before we finish it up. And there will be many, many opportunities for volunteer days. We're going to wear you guys out with opportunities to go out and dig and move rocks and help us shape these trails up. And we're going to have to continue to fundraise to finish it. We have a great start. We have a great plan. We have a contractor that we're really happy with Andrew Puckhofer and Trail Labs, and we're excited about the potential that this has. It's going to be a wonderful project, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mike. Well, let's leave trail construction and signage, and let's go to enjoying the trails with Linda and John.
Okay, here we go. This is the Trail Challenge 2021, and we're really excited to present it to you. It kicks off on May 1st, and this is our third Mount Shasta Trail Challenge, and it's guided by a passport. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. you can see that this is kind of a passport design, and the idea came as a way to encourage people to get out on the trails and guide them with this passport. And we are, just like any world traveler needs a passport to show where they're going and where they've been, we have created a passport to show how many great places you can go in Siskiyou County and record where you've been and what you can see along the way. Next slide. This year's challenge features 10 trails and many stewardship opportunities that highlight and enhance and maintain the beauty of the uniqueness of our area. You can see on the left that the trails are listed and the trailheads are listed. And next to that, there's the number of miles of each trail, the difficulty, and then a suggested stewardship activity. And this year, there's going to be stewardship opportunities for you. And even though Mount Shasta is always focused on stewardship, we saw a need to enhance the focus due to the high volume of visitors last summer. So you've heard how much stewardship the Mount Shasta Trail Association does on the trails, but we also wanted to talk about other ways to be a steward. And the Trail Challenge this year focuses on being a steward. Next slide, please. This particular part of the passport talks about the rules. Be one of the first 90 participants to complete at least 6 of the hikes and take part in 2 stewardship activities on the passport before October 31st, 2021, and win a Super Sparrow water bottle. When you complete your passport, email the Mount Shasta Trail Association with your list of trails and stewardship activities, and then go to the Visitor Center and in Mount Shasta claim your prize. And so we're really grateful the Mount Shasta Visitor Center is supporting us again to help us through the pandemic to distribute the prizes. Next slide. As I said before, this year our focus is on stewardship, and I kind of outlined some of the stewardship activities, the obvious ones we've talked about already, but I had some other ideas for people that might not be able to get out there and do the physical work. One thing you can do is you can describe the wildlife, look for evidence of scat, tracks, feathers, wild animals. And after you've identified the animals, report your findings to the Mount Shasta Trail Association as part of the passport. The next one is notice new trail work, and you can see there's a lot of new trail work to notice this year, and we've been very active. And so after you notice the trail work, you will describe it on the when you do one of the your 2 stewardship activities. The next one is to identify plants. Depending on where you hike, you will be able to see lots of unique plants in this area. And the idea is to identify several of your favorites. Understand historical uses and impacts. We chose many historical trails this year, and we'd like you to learn about why the trails exist and how their use may have been positive or negative. You heard Paul Schwartz talking about all of our signage. So one of the things I wanted to focus on was reading interpretive signage. There's also some great signage at the Mossbrae Falls area. Become an ambassador of our area by reading the interpretive signage and sharing your language with us and others. Knowledge of features. Knowledge of the geologic features. So that's an opportunity to get out there and look at some of our really unique geology and identify some of those geologic features. Remove litter, that's always a classic and very much appreciated. Volunteer for a work day, you can, or even 2, that could be your whole stewardship component. We have a lot of opportunities for that, as you can see, and those will be listed on our website. And the last one offers special skills to the Mount Shasta Trail Association. And some examples of that would be to help with fundraisers, technology, grant writing, photography. We always love to have the beautiful photography to help us with our social media. So each time a stewardship activity is completed and emailed to us, your name will be added to an ongoing stewardship drawing. And while you're out there on the trails, we hope that you're really going to enjoy a unique experience by contributing and learning about our area. Now, John Thompson, our hike leader, is going to tell you about the trails.
Good. Thanks, Linda. Well, here's the list of the trails for this year. I won't go down the whole list, but the Joan Romer will be organizing some Saturday Trail Association hikes on several of these trails during the summer. She's targeting early June for the first of those. What was it? Go to the next slide, John. We have two of the trails this year. Obviously, you've heard the discussion. They're under construction, and so check back on the website before you go, because as those trails get completed and open, we will be updating the mapping and the guides for each of the trails. You can on our website right now, go to the Trail Challenge page to find links to all of the Trail Challenge hikes. Let's go to the next page. We have 5 trails that are new for the Trail Challenge itself this year. And we have a couple that really are kind of new trails per se. One of the ones that I kind of like and I'm kind of promoting is this alternate way to get to horse camp is park at the upper road into Sand Flat, right there, park right on the Everett Highway. There's plenty of places to park there, and walk in that dirt road, go across Sand Flat, which is this winter view here, and then continue on up the old ancient trail up to horse camp. Hopefully we'll kind of drive the cars out of this meadow, out of these flats. The other new trail, the trail guide that's really being expanded over time is the Siskiyou Trail. The Forest Service, with the acquisition of all of this sections in the eddies over the last couple of years, is really rejuvenating the old Siskiyou Trail. A couple of years ago, they rebuilt the lowest section of it from along the lower section of the North Fork of the Sacramento. And again, that'll be one of our focus trails this year. Okay, so next slide. The trail guides typically will give you directions. They're turn-by-turn directions to get to each of the trailheads, but they're also supplemented. We have typically each one of the trailheads actually can be found in Google Maps by searching for them by name. Just some cautions when using any kind of online mapping, just download them beforehand so you have them in your phone. You go around a corner here and you lose cell service and you lose them. Google Maps I actually have the entire county downloaded. And then it's automatically updated every few months by Google. And it works anywhere. I've used it any place you don't have cell service, it works. If you have it downloaded. One of the cautions though is that when you get into the forest, the roads are shown in the right location, but they don't always have the right names. And so that's just a caution when you're out there. Okay, let's go to the next map. This is a typical one of the CalTopo maps. Now we're putting on the guides. One of the neat things about these are that the way we have it set up is if you take your phone and take a scan of that QR code down there, it'll load that map that you see, including the line work, into the CalTopo app on your phone. And this is the free version of the CalTopo map will give you maps like this on it. So you have a great way to follow where you're going out there in the field very simply. The website also, we have GPX files just so you can download them and put them into your own favorite app. And there's a PDF there for printing, which you should always be out there with a piece of paper, a paper map to back up the electronics. So, okay, that's it for right now.
Okay, thank you, John Thompson, and let's move on to John Harch.
Thank you, John. My job here is to update everybody on what the volunteer trail crew's been doing the past year or so. And I want to recognize Alyssa Winkleman first before we start. She's been helping the trail crew with organizing social media and being out there directing volunteers. So thank you, Alyssa. And that she will be doing that going forward. I often start with this slide right here for two reasons. One, I just love it. But the other one is that it shows that we really do have fun out there on the trails. Next slide. Each year in the spring, we partner with the Boy Scouts to clean up the Spring Hill Trailhead. And this is just an example. The Scouts have really turned out to be good workers. And you can just see these weeds get to be 3 to 5 feet tall. It's a huge job getting this out of here. So thanks to the Boy Scouts. And we'll be doing that again this spring almost for sure. Next slide. This is the connector between the library and the Sisson Meadow, and it gets very overgrown. So we go out there once or twice a year and clear that out, similar to what I just showed you at Spring Hill. I want to give a shout out to Mark Foster on the left there, who's in his late 80s, and he is out there with us all the time, dragging stuff, digging, raking. So he's fantastic. Next slide. We had a couple work days up on Sisson Callahan this past year. This one was kind of a misty, cloudy day. We had a huge group, including a bunch of kids. People had a great time. A lot of work got done cleaning this trail up. You can see these two young guys smiling and having fun. Next slide. And you can just see how many kids between the age of 12 and 20 we had. It was a great day. Next slide. This is John Whitson up on the new 10-gallon segment of Gateway 2. We had 2 winter work days. You can see the snow. John is new to the work crew, and here he is lopping roots out of the trail to make it smooth. Next slide. We were getting ready to buy a tool trailer this year to make it easier to tote things to the trail, but this trailer, this bike trailer, was donated by Brian Sint, who has worked for McConnell for years building trails in Reading. Next slide. It looked like this when we got it. Next slide. And it has now been filled with a big toolbox and a built-in on the right, and lots of safety equipment and pole saws, hand saws, McLeods. It's really outfitted. We've got hard hats in there, so we'll be able to tote that around everywhere we go now. Make it easy. Next slide. Thank you, Brian, for that, by the way. Here's some planting done at the Spring Hill Trailhead. The message here is you're not too young or too old to volunteer. And I might add that if you don't want to dig holes and drag McLeods around and do other things, there are other ways you can help. You can help us with food. You can help us organize. You can help us with social media. There are many ways to volunteer, so I'd encourage you to do it. Next slide. This is the Gateway 1 reroute where we were covering the burn piles before the Forest Service came in and did the burning. And this was a spectacular day. Look at the scenery there. This shows what John talked about in terms of what the views are going to be there. And we made a lot of new friends that day and had a good time. Next slide. Here is our technical crew, Mark Telligen and Paul Schwartz. Mark, as Paul described, has been behind a lot of the construction, and they're installing the kiosk over at the lake. Next slide. The construction's the fun stuff. We had a couple other work days up on Gateway 2. This was the Bear Springs segment. Once again, we got a bunch of young people up there, and it was terrific. Next slide. This is the Castle to Heart Lake Trail. This is the premier trail project, in my opinion. The volunteers are drooling to get back up here just because it's such a special place and the views are so terrific. We're going to be doing that soon. I would encourage you to come because we have some rock work to do that will not be moving stuff this big, but it's going to be creating and defining that trail, which I think will be very exciting. Next slide. This is more of the work up on the Heart Lake Trail. Next slide. And this is a rather large tree that fell at an undisclosed location nearby. It fell across the trail in 2 spots. It was so large, and this is our own Paul Schwartz out there showing us the size of this tree. It was massive. It took us hours to get this thing out. So a lot of fun out there and stuff you can do. Next slide. The reward is this. This is a chalet segment. It was a beautiful day. It just shows you how pretty it can be out there. We put a lot of work in on that chalet segment, but again, that's the reward. I do want to say that our goals for the volunteer trail crew are the following. 1, we want to build the number and the age range of our crew. Number 2, we want to complete Gateway 2 using volunteer labor to decrease our construction costs. And number 3, we want to find some serious grant money to establish an endowment to fund a paid crew. By the time we finish the 46 miles of Gateway 2, we will have 57 miles in Gateway. And I just don't see a volunteer crew maintaining that over the years. So I'd like to get $250,000 or more set aside to establish a paid crew. Don't forget that we do have a trail day this Saturday up at Bear Springs, and you can find the details on our website or on Facebook. And so that concludes my comments on the volunteer trail activities. I do have a couple general comments before we go to questions. Many thanks to the Siskiyou Land Trust, Steve Bollock and Kim Solga for this opportunity and technical help today. Thanks to all the presenters who did a great job and mostly stayed within their time limits. The MSTA board's vision for the near future includes the following. First, complete the Gateway 1 reroute and the Castle to Heart Lake Trail. We think that will be done, those 2 will be done in the next 6 months. Next, complete Gateway 2. It's huge, as Mike said. 3, realize the bridge and the trail to Mossbrae Falls. Next, reignite our effort to connect Snowman's Hill to Dunsmuir via a trail. I will tell you that is currently bogged down in liability issues, but we want to restart the process. Those things I just mentioned, we want to finish by 2025. So we're calling that Trail Vision 2025. And finally, on a longer term plan, we want to partner with the U.S. Forest Service on their South Fork project, which may open up the possibility of many miles of trail above Lake Siskiyou. In closing, we want to encourage you and your friends to become supporters and volunteers of MSTA and help us accomplish the goals I just outlined. And that's it. So at this time, we'll go through some questions. I have some questions sent in, and we'll go through them one by one, so we don't go too late into the evening here. There is a question from Nate Parker as to whether or not we're going to expand the parking at Hedge Creek. Tom Hesselbens, would you like to handle that?
For the first phase, we are going to get the trail done, recognizing that there's already a parking problem there. That will require more CEQA. I've done some design work in AutoCAD as to how we could fit quite a few more cars in there. The city's also suggested more parallel parking along Mott Road. So we're very definitely looking at that, and let's just call that phase 2. Our first goal here is to get people off the tracks.
Great, thank you. And the next question is kind of related to what you just said. There was a question from Ken. Do we want to try to get the 2 people who were hit by the train to sue UP and use the settlement money to pay for the whole thing? And I think I can answer that. No, we're not going to encourage anyone to sue. It's probably beyond the the limits of the lawsuit ability anyway at this point, but this whole issue with UP is very complicated and touchy. And so, you know, we're going to have to bring them along as a partner. I don't think we need to say too much more on that. Ken also asked regarding the work days, are we going to do them other than Saturdays and sometimes in the afternoon versus morning? The answer is yes. Sometimes we do have weekday work parties, but people have said, oh, please don't do that because I can't work on the weekdays. Please do them on Saturday or Sunday. So we'll try to spread them out. And the second one is we generally work in the morning, both because it gets hot by afternoon in the months that we work, and it's just easier to gather people in the morning, but we have done a couple of days in the afternoon. So I will take that under advisement and try to spread it out. Any comments from anyone else regarding those questions? Because there are more. Okay, moving on. I just want to, there are questions about the Delta bridges. I just want to say I spoke with Jason Ledbetter at the county within the past 24 hours. And the seasonal bridges, he had his guys go out and look. There is still too much flow right now for them to get in there and place the bridges, and too much concern that they may still get washed away. So he's thinking it's going to be approximately 3 weeks, depending on weather and rainfall. There was a question, are the issues between regarding the Lake Siskiyou Trail and the campground resolved? Wow. What to say about that? Paul, you want to jump in?
Okay, yes. So what I can say is it's complicated. And our kiosk and map project has been delayed by a year. And we took a lot of time last summer learning and understanding the relationship and the history between the county and the concessionaire out there. And I do not see an amicable solution occurring anytime soon, but there are ongoing efforts to create some type of harmony. I don't think it's all going to end until the contract ends in 2028.
I might add, there have been a lot of negotiations between the Trail Association, the county, and the concessionaire. And to sum it up, it's really gone nowhere. The contract for the concessionaire is very airtight, and we don't have much wiggle room. The county's doing what they can do, and without getting too much into this discussion, for many reasons, we're not able to solve the problem yet, is the answer. And that was a question from Thorne. So I'm sorry we don't have better news, but for now we can still walk and ride bikes through the campground and get on the trail, you know, get in and out from the trail on each end.
And John, I kind of anticipated that question coming up, and I could tell you that we could spend probably 3 out of the 6 webinar presentation series for next year's Siskiyou Land Trust on that one topic alone.
Yeah, yeah. Moving on, thank you. Moving on. There was a question from Daniel, are we going to extend the Lake Siskiyou Trail upstream from the seasonal bridges to provide more experience for people staying in the campground? And we don't have any plans for that. It's on different property owners up there. That's a complicated thing. Tom, you might want to address that briefly.
The long-term plan is to put the permanent bridge up at the edge of county land where there's a Forest Service inholding, crossing over. And then that also provides an opportunity to keep going upriver on that other side and tying in with the Siskiyou-Callahan Trail, so that Siskiyou-Callahan Trailhead can then be moved down to Lake Siskiyou. There were discussions in the past of a horse campground area on Lower Red Hill Road adjacent to the campground, so that there could be horseback riding starting there that can use the Siskiyou-Callahan Trail, but not the Lake Siskiyou Trail, other than the permanent trail over above the Delta. So lots of ideas for the future in that respect.
Thank you. And we are working, it's a long-term goal, but we are working on trying to get that permanent bridge to be a reality. That is one of our big goals. There was a question from Nate Parker, regarding Gateway 2. Is there a plan to expand parking, add bathrooms or trash cans? And I think I'm going to throw that to Mike and John rather than trying to answer it.
Okay, I can speak to that one. Yeah, there are plans. First off, I'll just do it trailhead by trailhead. There's a lot of parking at the Nordic Center, and we are going to add a vault toilet there, and that'll be also serviceable, of course, during the winter when the Nordic Center is there. And then the 10-gallon plantation trailhead is one that we're going to construct. That will probably be one of the larger trailheads. There's quite a lot of room there, so I don't anticipate any trouble there. There's really no easy way to expand the existing gateway parking area, except perhaps to establish an overflow parking area on the other side of the road or something like that. We really haven't talked about that one, but there's clearly a need there. It's just a difficult spot to make much bigger without doing a lot of earthwork. And then up at McBride, we will have a parking area on the below the Everett, across from the campground, to access the trails there at that point. So I think that probably the most significant issue is going to remain parking at the existing gateway. I think the other facilities, there'll be room to expand them. There are no plans to add a toilet at the existing gateway campground. That close to town, there'd be issues with vandalism and that kind of thing. So I don't see that happening. But that's the status of stuff right now.
Mike, did you mention the idea of a toilet at the Nordic Center?
Yeah, that was in the original plan. That was
right. One thing I would add is, as you mentioned, since Gateway is right adjacent to town, we're hoping that a lot of the users will just leave their house and bike or walk or run up to the trail network.
There are other issues. I was looking at questions, so I may not have heard everything Mike said, but you can only add so many toilets and trailheads and parking areas based on the original NEPA document. And the other thing that we were notified just within the last 24 hours about is that Becky, our recreation officer, Becky Cooper, mentioned that they're very strapped for money at the Forest Service, and going forward, we may have to help them with funding to clean the toilets, empty the trash cans, and pump the toilets. So, this is something that we're going to just have to keep fundraising to maintain this whole area.
Yeah, the infrastructure is always expensive, and it's really simple to build things, and it's really hard to maintain them. And anytime that when we look at these trailheads, we're always looking down the line at what's it going to take to maintain that site, and does the agency have the capacity to do it? And those are real issues that we have to wrestle with here.
Right, and I know that trash cans have been mentioned, but I think we're going to use a pack it in, pack it out philosophy, and not put trash cans out there.
Absolutely, yeah. We are not putting out trash cans because the animals will break into them, and it also costs. If you can pack it in, you can pack it out, and that's just part of the ethic of using the place. It's not hard to do.
We have to push that idea.
Yep, been doing it for 50 years. It's not hard to do. So let's see. That's about all I think we could say on that one at the time being.
Thank you. There are a couple more here. One is there any plan to have the signage or materials translated to other languages? And the answer is no. Those signs, for instance, that we put at the trailhead, the 5 signs are going to cost what, Paul? $5,000 just for the signs. So just getting that done has been a major challenge and costly. And how many languages would we put it in? It would cost $25,000 if we did that. So I'm sorry to say the answer is no. At this point, we don't have an option. Go ahead, Tom.
What could be done is a QR code where people would use their cell phones to get that. And then you could have it in multiple languages on a website.
Great idea. Paul, there's going to be a QR code on there, correct? No? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Well, something going forward to think about. Let's see. Here's one. Are there any talks or plans for protecting panther meadows, e.g. closing the gate at Bunny Flats for good? I hate seeing the meadows trampled every season, and it is also very culturally significant to Winnem and Wintu people. Thank you for all your work. Really appreciate it. I don't know that I could handle that question, except that the management of Panther Meadows, if I'm not mistaken, is up to the Forest Service. And I would direct those questions to them. But Mike, why don't you take that?
Well, I just say that, yeah, you need to talk to the Forest Service. I know that Panther Meadows is, high on their priorities for protecting. And I know that, they have some actions they're going to be taking. They'll be taking this next summer.
And that's all I was going to say. That's not a trail association project, and also I want to emphasize, since we've opened that discussion, almost all the work that we're doing is on agency land. It's on National Forest System land, and I want to emphasize that these are National Forest trails when they're on National Forest land. Like Gateway is not going to be a Mount Shasta Trail Association trail network. It's a National Forest trail network, and that's important to kind of keep that in mind as we look at this stuff. It's really what gives us the larger structure to be able to do this kind of stuff, and it's important to acknowledge the support of the Forest Service in getting this stuff done.
Anything we do up there is at their pleasure, their approval, even the work days. Steve, do I have a couple more minutes to answer a couple more questions?
If you feel they're essential, yes. We are running a little late, but go ahead if you have important things to speak to.
There's one or two that I think are important. One here is, are electric bikes able to be used on the trails? And the answer is, technically, according to the Forest Service, an electric bike is a motorized vehicle. And on these Forest Service Mike, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I can probably talk to this one.
Right.
So, yeah, when several years ago, the Forest Service went through a travel management planning exercise, and I was actually the team leader for that. And the question of motorized or electric bikes came up then. This was, I think, 2011, and of course they were not as sophisticated or as many of them as there are now. But the agency position, and this is in the travel regulations, so it's not easy to change this, is that electric bikes are motorized vehicles. And so, technically right now the rules say that it's a non-motorized trail. That means you're not supposed to ride motorized vehicles on it, and they include electric bikes. But I'll also note that the Forest Service is having a policy review on that rule, and that may be changing at some point in the future, because the question has evolved, and the bikes have evolved, and the information about that stuff has evolved. So I would expect that's something that the rules will be adapted as they move forward. But that's the answer right now.
There are lots more questions here, but they're pretty complicated. And I think we're out of time to deal with them. You guys can feel free to contact me or through our website. You can send questions, and I will always answer them. One of us will anyway. Once again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to the Siskiyou Land Trust for giving us this opportunity. And Steve, you want to wrap things up?
Yeah, thank you, John. Equal gratitude back to the Trail Association and all the incredible hard work that's being done, and all of the community members who are volunteers for the Trail Association and the Land Trust and all the other nonprofits. It's a wonderful community. Thank you all for joining us and for hanging in there. It's been a long evening. Have a good night.